People need to understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where a line gets crossed when the threat's not happening anymore. And it's really, I think I've said this before, but from a legal perspective, it's really the thing that separates us from law enforcement.
Hmm.
It really is. Like law enforcement gets to make this decision of, hey, we need to prevent their escape. I have an obligation to submit that person to custody. I have an obligation to prevent them from continuing to terrorize the streets and victimizing other people. Um, Without a badge, you don't have those duties, you don't have those obligations, and you don't have those legal protections either when you do those things. So, anyway,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. Now, I did want to bring law enforcement into the discussion, but I'm going to save that here. I got a question for you in just a moment. I want to touch on the tactical side of things with respect to dealing with a threat at a doorway.
hmm
Uh, I think we've made it clear that it's not prudent and it's pretty much never really legally justifiable to just shoot blindly through a door at a perceived threat. It's just a bad idea, right? So then it basically becomes a question of, okay, am I waiting for somebody to come through the door, or am I going out, to check on, to see what's going on? And the tactical thing I want to point out is people who hopefully have heard of the fatal funnel, and the further away you are from a fatal funnel, in this case, a door, we're talking about doorway defense, the better for you. Okay. So if you're dealing with a threat at the doorway, you're basically in the fatal funnel. If you're the one that's stepping through the door, going outside, you are putting yourself through the fatal funnel. And that's why tactically this is such a difficult, really not a bad, really not a good thing to try to deal with threats by going to or through the doorway, because you are putting yourself in that fatal funnel where there's one point of egress, right? Therefore, there's one point where a person needs to be concerned with dealing with you. You want to flip that equation around and make it easy on you. And the way you make that easy is you're not anywhere near the funnel and you're observing the funnel. And you can deal with the problems that come through that funnel pretty easily, especially if you're armed.
space buys time,
Yeah.
right? Space buys time. And so, what we see in a lot of these terrible, sometimes lawful, sometimes unlawful, but a lot of these terrible home defense scenarios, a common thread is bad tactics cause a person to put themselves too close to the threat, and then they don't have enough time to make a good decision about how to react.
Yeah.
So that's what happens when I put myself at the door and someone kicks in the door. My threat is on me. I mean, if it is a threat, it might be some. I mean, if they kick in the door, it's probably a threat. But the point is, I've lost all my time because the threat is on me. So space buys time. You purchase time in part by putting more space between you and the threat. The other way you purchase time is by putting cover between you and the threat, right? So, hey, I'm going to come down to the opposite end of the hallway. I'm going to get on, put this wall, from the doorway to the kitchen between me and that hallway, and I'm going to, slice the pie around and wait to see if something comes through that door while I've instructed someone to call 911. Cool. Now I got space and I have cover. I've maximized my time, right? Someone comes through that door and I get to think, process, make good decisions, and decide my course of action.
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty much what I wanted to hit on tactics wise. That's just the smart thing to do. So let threats come to you through a fatal funnel and put your as much space between you and that fatal funnel as you can. And that's gonna be your best chance to come out of it successfully and to make the best decisions that you can. Here's the question though I wanted to bring into the discussion I think is worth mentioning because we were talking about dealing with issues at doorways. Uh, we've been talking entirely from the perspective of bad guys trying to break in. Okay, so when is it appropriate to deal with bad guy? I think we've hit on that adequately enough. What if it's not a bad guy, Jacob? What if it's law enforcement? Okay,
The firefighter.
or a fighter? Sure, it could be a firefighter. All right. I'm going to use the law enforcement as an example though, because it's probably a little bit more, certainly is more controversial. But and we see lots, we see a fair number of these kinds of incidents that have happened over the years. Maybe less so with firefighters. And that is either you've got, for some reason, law enforcement is showing up at your house, and they may have a justified reason to do so, or it could be that they're supposed to be serving a warrant somewhere else, and they got their information wrong, and that has happened, and it shouldn't happen, and there should be
Sure.
safeguards in place that keep that from happening. But we
It
can't.
has happened.
But it has happened. So
Yeah.
the point is it happens. So let's just imagine dudes are at your door. They're banging on that door. They're basically trying to force their way in, and they may very well be doing that in the case of certain certain warrants being served, particularly no knock warrants. And again, that's where the controversy comes into play. And we're not here to talk about the controversy, but just here's the thing. What I know for you is that things will not go well regardless of if you have justification or not. Okay, because I think that there could be justification made that, hey, I shot because of the following reasons. I thought this was a legitimate threat, right? And to be clear, there have been bad guys that have tried to gain entry into homes pretending they're law enforcement. That is also documented.
Yep.
Okay. So like this is a legit concern, right? So point is, you got somebody at the door, they're trying to force their way in, and they're calling out, police, police. Okay. Right?
Yeah. Legitimate or not.
Right, right. So how do you deal with that? That's the question I'm posing.
Yeah, I think this is like your worst case scenario, probably. But I think that all of a sudden, verbality. Is that a word? Did I make that up? I might have made that up.
I'll look it up.
Yeah, check,
We'll
see
get
if I
the
made up.
crack research staff here.
Verbality, I think, becomes pretty important. Like this idea of communication. Communication becomes really important. Police, police. If someone's shouting police, police, I'm sort of like, no, you're not. No, you're not.